Since WWE 2K22 launched, I've been playing a ton of MyGM mode. As someone who played this mode for most of my childhood, I was suitably excited when it was confirmed to be returning. Whilst GM mode certainly is fun and can provide some great moments, I can't help but feel that it still needs a lot of work. Due to the bare bones nature of it, you can only really get a stripped down experience of the previous GM modes. So this video is going to be suggesting 5 things that MyGM mode should change in order for it to be perfect. I'm going to go on record and say that if 2K implements these changes, then this game will win Game of the Year 2022, no questions asked. Forget Elden Ring, that's not going to stand a chance. So without further ado, let's get straight into the list. Okay, so point number 1 I'm going to make is that this game mode needs to have more variety in its match types. So when you've done your draft and you've picked your champions like I'm doing now, you can then go in and start to book your matches. But the only problem is, when you go in and try and book your matches, you only get met with one of 2 options. You either have a 1v1 match or a tag team. Now I don't know about you, but for anyone that's watched wrestling for a good amount of time, you'll know that there's way more variations than this. What about triple threat matches? What about fatal 4-ways? What about 6-man? It seems crazy to me that the entire game mode is limited to just 2 of the variations. And seeing as the game tries to encourage variety when putting on shows, it makes it quite hard to do so when you can only do a 1v1 or a tag team. So obviously the first change I would make is to put in triple threat, fatal 4-way, or even 6-mans into this option. It's not a big change and it would go a long way to help put more variety into every single show you do. But not only is there only 1v1 and tag teams, you can only do 5 types of matches. You've got normal matches, tables matches, extreme rules matches, TLC, and then Hell in a Cell. Now I actually think this is implemented quite well, because if you use a Hell in a Cell, then the cost of the show goes up. Similarly, if you put people in the Hell in a Cell matches, their stamina will be used more than a regular match. So it all works out in terms of the dynamic. What it doesn't account for though are the other match types that really should be in this game mode. Again, being able to throw an iron match in or a buried alive match would really help for show diversity. And seeing as some of the PPVs have 5 matches on them, you're using every single option in one show. So yeah, I think that would make a big difference to the game in general if you had more variety in match rules and in match type. The second point I want to make is more realistic ratings for match types. So if you've played this game quite a lot, then you'll know that certain matches don't get rated very highly by the game. So for this example here, I've put John Cena up against Finn Balor. Now that's a bruiser versus a fighter, which is something else we'll touch on later, so that's actually something they want to happen. But the fact that it's only a 1v1 match with no stipulation leaves it at a 2.5 star OK rating. In real life, this match would probably go down very well with fans. Both are great workers and know how to put on a good show. But it seems that the individual in the match doesn't really make a difference in this game mode. For all I know, this could have been Slapjack versus Xavier Woods and the exact same result would have happened. So I think that WWE 2K needs to make sure that it's being realistic with how it rates the matches. I'm not saying give every single 1v1 a 5 star, because that would be ridiculous. But for good, well-constructed 1v1 matches with rivalries and class types in mind, they should be getting better ratings than 2.5 star. And I wouldn't mind if this was a one-off, but it's actually the other way round. It's very normal to get a 2.5 star rating or below for a 1v1 match, and very rare that you see any rating above 3.5 star for it. I've played through quite a few saves already, and it seems like you can just put anyone in a Hell in a Cell and it will result in a 3.5 star or more match. For example, I could have John Cena and Finn Balor getting a 2.5 star for a 1v1 no stipulation match, and then go and get a 5 star match for James Ellsworth versus Heath Slater in a Hell in a Cell. And they wouldn't even need any sort of rivalry built up, it would just be a random match. So I guess point number 2 is make more realistic ratings based on the people involved rather than the stipulation of the match. That way people can really feel like they're involved in a show and not just doing things to please the algorithm. I was actually going to end the point there, but I've just gone on to simulate the Bayley vs Becky Lynch match, and this is exactly what I mean. 1.5 star for 2 of the best female workers in the company. Anyway, on to point number 3. So the third point is to drastically revamp the forced class type in matches. So as you can see here, I've selected John Cena and now it's encouraging me to put him up against a fighter. I mean, it's not even taking into account the heel-face dynamic. It's suggesting R-Truth and Xavier Woods, who would both be a terrible match. Realistically, Finn Balor is the only one that I can choose that will put on a semi-decent match. And then going back to the previous point, that wouldn't even go down well unless I put them in a Hell in a Cell match. The fact that I can't put Bobby Lashley, Cesaro, Walter or Slapjack up against John Cena and expect a good fight really takes away from the realism of the game. It's just so limiting, I don't understand why they would do this. And the minute I put anyone that isn't a fighter up against a bruiser, they tell me that the match type was terrible, and that none of the fans want to see that sort of fight. It all just seems so ridiculous because it means you have to put the same matches on week in, week out. Not only does this really take away from the amount of variety that you can put in your shows, it also destroys your superstar's stamina. It all just seems so basic and bare bones. The idea that Rey Mysterio could never have a good match with John Cena is just absurd. So that's point number 3, to drastically change the class types in order for more variety in the matches. Point number 4 is that wrestlers' requests are just sometimes plain ridiculous. I had a tag team match set up with Cesaro and Strowman facing off against Carrillo and R-Truth. After the match, Cesaro comes to me requesting to have a rematch with Carrillo, seeing as Carrillo beat him and for some reason he's now really embarrassed. But this puts you at a complete crossroads, because if you don't fulfill that request, then he's going to get angry and lose morale. But if you do, then you're sacrificing one of your matches because it's automatically going to be poor. But anyway, I fight Cesaro versus Carrillo and of course it goes down as a terrible match. Triple H grills me in the DMs and suddenly I'm thinking, what was the point in any of this? But that isn't the only ridiculous request that I have an issue with. I can't even tell you how many times a random superstars come to me and said that they're going to rip their contract up if I don't pay them $100,000. $100,000, do you know how much that is? That's pretty much an entire show in the early game. And I'm sorry Chuck Palumbo, but you're just not worth that. So point number 4, fix the wrestler requests and just make them a little bit more realistic. So the final point, and possibly the most vague one, just expand the mode. When I set up a GM mode, I want to play for years. If you look at other career mode based games like Football Manager and FIFA, you can play that career mode for years and years and years, meaning that the decisions you make and the emotional attachment you get to some of your stars actually matters because you can go into the next year and try and build on that a little bit more. Currently when you set up a game, you only have the option of 15 weeks, 25 weeks and 50 weeks. Now 50 weeks might seem like a lot, and sure it would probably take you a good 6-7 hours to play through the whole thing, but then what happens after that? You're just done. The whole universe is just gone. I've said this in a few comments on previous videos, but I think that this feels like a trial game. Like a little taster that they're giving us ready for the final drop. And the thing is, there's so much good stuff in this mode. But they just need to put a bit of time into making the game mode more in depth. So to fix this, I suggest that they put in updates to the game every so often just to add more things to it. Maybe there could be an update where they put in triple threats and fatal 4-ways. Then in the next update they have Iron Man matches and Tornado Tag matches, for example. There are seriously so many updates that they could drip feed into the game throughout the year. Seeing as this is the first time they've implemented a GM mode in a while, it's going to take some trial and error to get it completely right. Now whilst I do think that they could have put the entire version in at the start and just kind of taken things out or added things that way, they can still update this game every so often and keep it going throughout the entire year. So they were my 5 changes that WWE 2K22 MyGM mode needs to make in order to be a great feature. Feel free to leave any more changes that you've thought of in the comments below. Also, if you want to see a part 2 of this video, then make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video so we know you enjoyed it. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.